Anyway, this is Matthew Gross. Matthew has been a jeweler since, well, he started apprenticing when he was 14 with local jewelers. And he's got lots of experience. He's a local area artist and jeweler in Berkeley. He's worked extensively with people in Mexico. We've done extensive research on history of Taxco, which is like the silver capital. And so he's going to be giving us a presentation today. And he's also one of our guild members. Be nice to him. So anyway, Matthew Gross.
So welcome. I'll tell you a little bit about myself first. Oh. Let me tell you about this. So I do different kinds of workshops and lectures. So this is the Taxco one. I also do a gem identification lecture. I do a stone setting and a jewelry design workshop all around libraries, art centers. I'm going to send around this if you're interested in just not signing up, but just interested in any of the workshops. Just put your name and email and then check off which box, and I can send you updates as I do the next one. I'm going to be working with the BBAC on some as well. So if you're interested, you can sign up with that. So from these pictures you can see my wife and I, we love to travel. And whenever I travel, I always meet different jewelers and artists while I'm traveling. It doesn't matter where. I always reach out to them through Instagram. It's the easiest way. And I want to see how their workshops are set up and how they're working with jewelry. And sometimes I'll take a workshop there, like in Portugal. I took a filigree workshop. It was really great. A lot of people ask me why Mexico. I spend a lot of time in Mexico every year. So I've met families there that are making jewelry, and this particular family, Jesus and his wife and their daughter, they teach kids to make jewelry, and it helps them to make a living. So I was pretty inspired by that story. Long story short, we've sent so far $15,000 worth of equipment and supplies and tools down to San Miguel de Allende, which is about 3 hours north of Mexico City. So a little bit about myself. I got into the jewelry industry when I was 14 years old. No family history of jewelry, just loved the art, hated reading. I had a really bad learning disability, so I gravitated towards the arts. I've been in the industry for now 38 years. I've been full-time in my own studio since 1995. When our first son was born, I decided that's it, I'm going to go off and do it. So what do I do at my studio? My studio's in Berkeley on Coolidge, right by C.R. Hill. A lot of people know that place. And I do repairs, a lot of repairs, and I do a lot of custom work. And my specialty is working one-on-one with clients, doing redesign work where they might have a piece of jewelry that they're not wearing and they want to redesign it, and that's where my specialty comes in. I'm really good at mind reading with that. So let's jump right in. So welcome to the history of Taxco. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the history, and I'm going to take you through the design, and I'm going to talk about the man. So if you don't like history, but you love design, there's plenty for you. So there's each spot, something for everyone. So what attracted me to Taxco? Taxco is known for its silver deposits and for being a jewelry hub. So as a jeweler, I was really fascinated by it, and I spent a lot of time, like I said, in Mexico, trying to see the different cultures. And so I decided I'm going to take this research trip while I'm in Mexico and go down to Taxco. So what attracted me was the silver that was the first grab, and the history of just different cities in Mexico that are just so interesting with their Spanish colonial design. Has anybody ever heard of Taxco? No? Okay, good. Has anyone ever been there?
Yes.
You are? Oh, great.
Years and years, late 50s.
Okay, cool. So where is Taxco? Taxco is located in the state of Guerrero. I must also say, my Spanish is terrible. So if anyone speaks really good Spanish, you're more than welcome to correct me. This is an interactive workshop. So it's in the state of Guerrero, which is just a little bit south of Mexico City. You can see on the map. Oh, my laser pointer doesn't work on maps. And it's right north of Acapulco. So most people that, when I say I went to Mexico, everyone thinks I went here. Cancun, Cozumel, that's what everyone knows. But actually, it's over on the other side. And San Miguel is in the state of Guanajuato, up here. So it's relatively close. To get to Taxco, you need to go to Mexico City first, which is 2 hours, and then you go another 2 hours to Taxco. So, Taxco is in what's a part of what's called Mesoamerica. So, meaning the middle of Latin America. And these other countries, these are also within Mesoamerica. So Taxco was originally inhabited by the Aztecs, who were extremely creative people. This is some pottery from the Anthropology Museum in Mexico City. Has anyone been to this museum? So it's it's the largest anthropology museum in the world. This time was referred to as pre-colonial period, and you're going to see different types of artifacts from that period. The piece on the left is the alphabet, the Aztec alphabet. Most of the jewelry was made for religious purposes and just they're different styles. Like today, we make pieces, if we get married or whatever. So it's to commemorate special occasions, but also spiritual traditions. So the Aztecs, they were really known for their masks. You'll see a lot of masks involved and a lot of precious metal involved with that. Then, of course, there's the modern conspiracy theories. These pieces are interesting. Try to throw a little pop culture into the top. So the one on the left is the conspiracy theories that the Aztecs saw airplanes. And then the one on the right is an astronaut. And then we have Darth Vader and the Ten Commandments. Okay, back to modern. So we have some more pieces here with the carvings. It's incredible what they did with the tools that they had. I don't know if you've ever tried to drill holes in stones, but it's really tough, and they figured it out. And the carvings, the swirled carvings, it's really interesting. So what is the pre-Columbian period? We've heard about this, but some people know it and some people don't. So the pre-Columbian period is referred to as the pre-Columbus, or the first contact period. So in the 16th century, the Spanish invaded Mexico, and Hernando Cortez was the guy that led that invasion. This is a little background history. So when he arrived, it was a very friendly exchange of gifts, as depicted in the paintings. Some more with Emperor Montezuma. He actually was a person. It's not just a revenge. He was actually a person. No, that wasn't really how it went. It was more like that. So it was not a pleasant experience for the local indigenous people in Mexico. It was a pretty forced. Maybe it started out as let's check out these people and see what they're like, but then we're eventually just going to conquer them. So Spanish conquered in force, and they also conquered in. Anyone know?
Germs.
Disease. Oh, they killed off half the people just with smallpox. The Spanish had built up an immunity to it, but they exposed the locals with it, and they killed half of them off with that. So the Spanish took over Taxco because of the silver. So there were a lot of silver deposits there. So that was what drove their quest in that region. The first thing they did was they established mines And you can see the style mines that they did. They did these open cavern mines where they would go down. Here's a shot in the early 1900s. We think about some of these things like it's way, way back, but it's really not that far back. So these are just inside the mine with the locals. I thought this was interesting. It's a certificate of mining from 1907. So with the silver came a lot of money, and with money came building. See this picture on the left, it's very early, and then very quickly things started getting built up. So in the center of the town, there's this beautiful church, this Baroque style church, called the Santa Prisca. And it was built in the 18th century. So the Spanish arrived in the 1500s, and then 300 years later, they started seriously building all this stuff. So this is the inside of the church. It's all gilded in gold. You can see kind of like that medievalish feel to it. So the architecture of Taxco and a lot of Mexico is a very Spanish colonial design. You have like the whitewashed buildings with the terracotta roofs and the cobblestone streets, and a lot of iron working. It's very European looking there. The streets are winding, very medieval feeling, and with the cobblestone streets, it's kind of challenging to walk on. But what makes it really challenging is the elevation. The elevation is 5,800 feet, but that's not so bad because the city that I go to in San Miguel is 6,200. What's tough with this is it's built on a mountain, like a very steep mountain. So walking the streets is like, it's a job. So with the silver not only benefited the local economy, but it also benefited Spanish's global empire at the time. So in the 1800s, Mexico achieved their independence by Miguel Hidalgo, and this painting kind of gives you an idea of the victory of it. There's a city called Dolores Hidalgo, and that's where it started. That city is an hour from San Miguel de Allende, where I go to, and in the middle of the city is Miguel Hidalgo, the statue. Dolores Hidalgo is known for its pottery. It's the hub of pottery making in Mexico. So by the 19th and 20th century, pretty much the silver was very depleted. And so the city went into a really bad financial situation. So they kind of shifted from the mining to craftsmanship. Because there was a lot of Aztec ancestry, they had those skills, so they kind of applied them in more modern times. And then there was this guy named William Spratling. Has anyone heard of William Spratling? Who has? Raise your hand if you have heard. Okay, cool. So who was William Spratling? William Spratling is known as the father of modern Mexican jewelry, basically. So who is he? He was born in 1900 in New York City. Ironically, both his parents died in 1910, and he moved to Alabama, where he pursued a career in architecture. When he graduated from school as an architect, he moved to New Orleans and taught at Tulane University. So he lived in the French Quarter, and in that time period, in the 1920s, it was known as the New Orleans Renaissance time period. It was like the Bohemian of the South. A lot of artists were there, and Spratling spent a lot of time at this place called the Arts and Crafts Club. So who was there? There were a lot of painters and musicians and politicians and celebrities and writers. A very close friend of his was William Faulkner, and they wrote a book together. And I've highlighted politicians. Just keep that in the back of your head. Bring that up in a couple minutes. So between the years of 1926 and 1928, Spratling was hired by the Mexican University in Mexico City to come down and lecture about architecture. He would do that every summer. He traveled by train and it took 3 days. When Spratling was there, he illustrated books and wrote different books on the culture of Mexico. He also wrote for architectural magazines and about the colonial architecture. So all these little things just to keep him there, to pay him, basically, to stay there. So he wrote these different articles and magazines. So while he was exploring Mexico, he was drawn to Taxco. For pretty much the same reasons that most people are. It's just such an interesting place. It was rich in culture with the dancing, the food, and the architecture of the town, its colonial history, and just the natural beauty of it. It's very mountainous and just lots of trees, and it's just a really beautiful place. So in 1929, Spratling, he just decided, I'm going to move here. So Spratling, he became really good friends with a lot of the artists, and 2 of them happened to be Frida and Diego. So it's funny because in Michigan, in the Detroit area, we all know Diego Rivera, and then we hear about Frida. Everywhere else, it's Frida, and then, Diego's her husband. So it's interesting. So in the 1930s, Spratling, he gets Diego Rivera this mural commission at the Palace of Cortez, which is named after the guy that invaded Spain in the 1500s. So it's this gigantic palace, and Diego Rivera does all these murals throughout the whole palace. So take a guess who paid the commission of this? It was the United States ambassador to Mexico, somebody that he met at the Arts and Crafts Club in New Orleans. He was a good friend of him, Dwight Morrow. So with the commission from that, Spratling bought this house, which is just beautiful. It's gorgeous. Spratling was really a big collector of pre-Columbian artifacts. He even had an entire museum in one of his houses in Taxco, where he displayed everything. He was a very suave type guy. Everyone that I talked to there, they said that they always saw him with a cigar and a glass of mezcal, which is like a local spirit. So his good friend, Dwight Morrow, he told Spratling that, the city's been known for silver for so long, but since the mines dried up, it really hasn't been known for much. So, and it had never really been considered a major jewelry hub at that point. So this kind of got the wheels turning in Spratling's brain, and because of the historical significance of the silver production and the artistic potential of what was there, meaning the people that had already been making jewelry in different vessels of silver, he thought, wow, these people could execute my dream of creating a whole industry of silver objects. So he established this workshop, but he had a real difficult time getting people to come and embrace his ideas. So he went off to Iguala, Mexico, which is about 50 miles from Taxco, and he found this silversmith named Artemio, and he convinced him to move to Taxco to make his objects. So eventually, through free education and money, people started jumping into the situation of learning the craft the way William Spratling wanted to make his pieces. So by 1941, he had employed 120 people to work for him, which was just incredible. It was like, you know, the automobile industry here, but silver jewelry industry. So he established his first workshop, Taller de las Delicias, which means the workshop of delights. And then he formed a school. And this is one of the graduating classes, and you see here Arturo. And here's some photos from the original workshop. Let me get out of here. Not that much different from today, the tools. So this is an interesting picture. So they're rolling out this big sheet of silver here, and then there's a machine that was used at that time that I saw when I was there. So they used the sheets to do stamp outs, repose, and chasing work. So this machine here is one where it's stamping the pieces out. You can see the belts. Originally they said that there was a guy that was assigned to ride this bike type thing to make it run, because electricity was tough down there. And you can see the stampings that are produced. So those are dies. There's hundreds and hundreds of those dies with different patterns. And then the repose and chasing work. This is the older picture of one of the jewelers working on that. And then we have some more larger vessels. So what Spratling was really great at was blending the pre-Columbian designs with the Mexican motifs and then combining it with his more modern ideas. He was kind of a master at that, and it probably had a lot to do with his architectural training. So this piece here on the left had the inspiration from the pattern along the pottery. Spratling was really known for the jaguar motif that is very popular with the Mexican culture. Here it is again. This is a pre-Columbian sculpture on the right of the jaguar. Then the Mexican flag, in the center of the Mexican flag is the eagle fighting the serpent. And there's this whole story behind that about Mexico City, but that'll be another talk. So this is an influence from the flag. It's inspired him with the bird and the serpent and then another bird. And there's another bird piece. And we have the serpent, the influence of that. So in Mexico, it's crazy. I see so many hummingbirds. They're everywhere. And clearly, Spratling was inspired by the hummingbirds as well to start creating pieces based off of that. And then you can see kind of where he's gotten into the dots that are very prevalent in a lot of artifacts that you see. We have the dots there. I love his sketches. These are the original sketches. We have now it's kind of growing now. Now you're getting more three-dimensional with the dots. You can tell that the craftsmen are learning more. We have a really cool sketch with the finished piece. And then here we're drawing in the dots with these lines from the pottery. And then this is a little bit more modern of time. So this is a piece of pottery from Dolores Hidalgo, and you've probably seen it. It looks like there's raised dots all over it. So that's where this came from. And then you got that crisscross pattern. And the pottery as well evolved. It got a little more curved and swirling, so then he played with that as well. You can see the dots right here. Now they're raised. So in Mexico City, there's a huge archaeological spot, actually the largest pyramid archaeological spot in the world, after Giza. There are two major pyramids here. One is the Pyramid of the Sun and one is the Pyramid of the Moon. The larger one is the Sun. That one's 1/3 the height of Giza. But the area is much bigger than Giza. So this piece was drawn from the inspiration of both of those, how it looks like pyramids coming up. So this is the Pyramid of the Sun, and the darker one represents the Pyramid of the Moon. Then Spratling had fun with other elements within the pyramids as well, the steps. He created these linear pieces. And then he kind of started twisting them. This pyramid is actually on the other side of Mexico in the Yucatan Peninsula called Chichen Itza. And then here he's taken the steps and he's used different key words like twist and swirl and bend, and he's changing the form of it just through different key, like I call them trigger words in my design workshop, of how you can take one form and just using words create many other pieces of jewelry with that. This is me and my wife. I had to throw that in. So you can see how he's built on the pyramids again, but more three-dimensional, coming off of the piece. And then he's building on it again with his design, introducing copper and stacking it up. And then here, this picture is really important because we've jumped into a whole other level of complication. We've got different size pyramids and different size spheres. You know, we have the long pyramids, the short pyramids. So the math to do these is just crazy, to figure it out how it's going to fit someone. And so you can really see how the circles went to spheres, that went to three-dimensional objects. It's really interesting to see the evolution of how they taught themselves to get even more creative based off of increased skills. So here we have another piece with kind of influenced on the big gauge earrings that people wear even today now. So this series, of course, is I made a necklace, but I have to also make the matching bracelet. So here we have it again. So this one was based off of the alphabet, and then small little elements within the alphabet. You can see the curving and the little scroll work. Here we have it again. And the overlapping serpents. It's really fun.
I have that bracelet.
That one?
Yes.
Oh,
I didn't bring it because it's not wearable right now, but it needs to be wearable.
that's very cool. So now we're getting into the Mexican motifs, the patterns that were very popular. You can see it's very directly related. And then he threw in a sphere, just because it complements it. And then here we go again, adding a little inlay work on the side. This is a fun piece, because this is a lot more complicated with the overlapping, but still following that motif.
Not to screw you up here, but what is it? Are they primarily cast? Are they primarily fabricated? What's the mix of cast and fabrication?
So they started out in fabrication, and then they started casting later on. Yeah, but a lot of the pieces that you see that look like they're cast, they were actually fabricated, because the silver was so cheap then, so they didn't really, they rolled out a 2mm piece and hand cut it out. But yeah.
You said that the silver mines in Taxco were played at. Where are they getting? Have they been getting the silver? Point one. The second point is, were these things done as individual, unique pieces, or were they done as multiples?
The originals were done for commissions, and then they would take a die of them, and then they would make motifs. But yeah, the originals.
And how about the silver?
And the silver, a lot of it's being recycled now, and they're getting it from other areas, like Guanajuato has silver in it. But yeah, most of Taxco's silver is depleted. So the Aztec calendar was a very influential typepiece for Spratling. And then here's a piece of pottery, very old pre-colonial piece. I highlighted where the design influence kind of overlaps. This piece is fun. So I was talking with somebody there, and they showed me this piece, and then they were very proud to show me the piece of art that it was based off of. Usually it's not that obvious, but in this situation it was. And then here's a piece that has multiple inspirations from one piece of fabric. You have the flowers, and then you have the fringe dangling down, and then the movement of the ribbons throughout the rest of the piece. The wood, the popular tree there is the rosewood tree, and so he experimented with wood in the pieces as well. I don't know how many people have worked with wood, but it's really tough with jewelry. I've tried a few pieces, not very successful at it, but yeah, so it's kind of tough. So then they also made these larger objects. I think this is just something to sit on the table. And the candlestick holders. And then here's a vessel, and you can see them working on it with the drawing. So eventually, with all of Spratling's hard work, there was a resurgence in the city's visitors buying silver jewelry and flatware, and here we're seeing, not just the native people, but like people from Mexico City and all around. So the word got out, and all of a sudden the celebrities started going there. Marilyn Monroe, John Wayne, and John F. Kennedy. Coincidentally, John F. Kennedy was there at the same time that Marilyn Monroe was there. They have the hotel where they were at. It's crazy. So here's her sitting at a table at Spratling's house, and she commissioned Spratling to make a table and chairs, paid for it, and never picked it up. So it's still there. She died before she got to pick it up. So how did people hear about Taxco? I mean, they didn't have the internet back then. So how did all these people find out? Well, they found out through the Amazon of the day. Spratling was very creative, and he advertised in the Sears Roebuck and the Montgomery Ward's catalog, which went out to the entire United States. He also was in the Tiffany's, Neiman Marcus, and Saks Fifth Avenue. So why did the Americans want to go to Mexico, and why were they buying all these Mexican imports? Because it was during World War II, and there were no imports coming in from Europe, and they couldn't travel to Europe. So I read in a couple different places that Taxco was referred to as the Paris of Mexico. So in 1948, there was actually a movie created. Spratling had this movie, and it's called The Man from New Orleans. You can go on YouTube and Google and look it up. It's still on there. So the people that I've talked to, they said it's kind of accurate. There's a lot of like Hollywood involved into it too. It's kind of funny, and at the end they show Spratling. But yeah, it's an interesting movie. So that's the other way that he promoted it. So his first three apprentices were Hector Aguilar, Antonio Pineda, and Antonio Castillo. So Spratling was a very hands-on guy, and he taught them so much about metalsmithing. He empowered them to be such great people, and he taught them so well that they all left and went on their own business. So they started their own business and kind of branched off. And he wished them well, but he said, just don't copy me. So the first person we're going to talk about is Antonio Castillo. So he had 4 other brothers, and they were also making jewelry for William Spratling, and they left also, and they formed Castillo's Brothers Jewelry Workshop. And here you can see it. So it's actually the workshop of the Castillo Brothers Silver of Taxco. And it literally looks like you're in a jungle. It's about a half an hour outside of Taxco. And so you travel there on these bumpy roads. It's really great. They're paved, but they're bumpy. And you get to this amazing ranch of just multiple buildings with different workshops inside of it. And the doors are even just so beautiful when you walk up to it. And when you open the door, you might see somebody just using a polishing machine. 2 things that really killed me with watching this: no mask, and all that polishing dust on the floor. It's a lot of money just sitting on the floor.
It looks like they have a piece of cardboard in front of their
Right,
face.
that's yeah. So this copper piece, this will never be sold, they said. They make an exact piece and then they copy it. So they prototype it first just to make sure that they get all the kinks out of it. So literally I was 3,800 miles from Michigan in the middle of nowhere, and one of the Castillo grandsons is wearing a Detroit Lions sweatshirt. I'm like, what? How? That's just crazy. But so I said, I got to take a picture of this guy because no one will believe the story. So yeah, he pretty much does like all hand fabrication. So they do pieces like this. So you can start to see from when they were at Spratling's place, they did a certain level of design and in complication, and now they've kind of stepped it up. Because now they're more motivated to make more money, so now they're creating their own designs. And these are, they're 3-dimensional, they're not flat. That's a beautiful piece. Imagine rings. These are rings. I mean, I kind of know how they do it, but I don't really know how they do it. So this is a combination of casting and then, hand assembly. And they love the motif patterns as well from Mexico. And that was their take on the eagle. So this is some wall art that they created, and it was created exactly how you would think. They started making these because they had just tons of scrap laying on the ground. That's what they told me. And so now they had these pieces that, a little bit of copper, a little bit of brass, and they started creating these. So they're known for their inlay, and this is a really beautiful piece. It's one of their award-winning pieces that they do. They make, the first one was the original, but then they make all these copies of it. And so I saw these pieces. I never buy jewelry on trips, but I bought those. And I don't wear earrings. They're earrings. But I figured I'll make one into a pendant and one into a ring.
Question on that.
Yes.
What kind of soldering? You're going to, I'm assuming you're going to take off what's on the back and resolder, say, your rig. How would you know what solder they might have used to, that?
So you can do it one of 2 ways. You can start adding parts to it, or you can treat it like a stone and just bezel set that entire piece. It's flat on the back. As far as soldering goes, I have a laser roller. So here's another piece of another inlay piece. They also do larger pieces like this. So this is pretty cool. Like that whole building is just filled with molds. So like this piece here, they did large sculptures also, was multiple molds, and then they soldered the sections together. So
So
next,
the molds are for wax?
yeah, so they
doing
do the wax, and
waxing?
they do
Okay.
like the foundry type, like big pours.
Yeah.
So I wanted to show this shot of their stamp because now when you're maybe at a flea market or a garage sale or somewhere and you see a piece of silver, flip it over, look at the stamps. Now you might say, oh, look, it's Taxco. And then you might want to see who the maker was. So the next guy is Antonio Pineda. And he was a very suave advertising kind of guy. These are pictures from magazines that he advertised in the United States also. He just followed right along the way Spratling did it. Why reinvent the wheel? And you already know it works. So he had his take on the eagle as well. I like how he added the pearls to it. Here's a piece that he took the pattern. It's almost a repeat pattern type feel, but it's not. And then he took the same pattern and created these pieces. This piece, I really like it. You can, without touching it, you can touch it. Like you know how that feels. It's very smooth, and you can feel the bump. You already know what it feels like. Yeah.
The piece before, those beads were riveted in?
Yeah, they riveted those. I'm gonna guess. Yeah, you can see the rivets.
Yeah.
This is a little different, a lot more contemporary. His bracelets were incredible, and I looked at these in person, and you can hardly see any seam at all, the solder seams. And then he also drew, Antonio Pineda, he drew inspiration from the pyramids also. This is a cuff bracelet. He was the first one that I saw that did rings. So that was really interesting. Then he did other types of objects. You can see how he came up with this idea, but then kind of went on a design adventure and kind of came up with this. And you can see like different elements that translate into different pieces that he did.
Is that sculptural or wearable?
Sculptural. It's like this big.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
Yeah.
It's all silver. Candlestick holders. And then his stamps also. Each maker down there, they stamp all their pieces. So Antonio Pineda, he died in 2009, and his daughter has continued the business. She's also an artist. So throughout Spratling's life, I didn't really get into it, but he had tons of financial issues, just like most extremely creative, crazy people. And he had lots and lots of drama. But he definitely lived his life the way he wanted to. Sadly, on August 7th of 1967, he was driving his brand new Mustang, and he swerved around a tree that fell and crashed into another tree. The passenger in the car, who should have been driving, his chauffeur, ran off to get help. The last thing he said was, well, let's see if I'll survive this one, and he died at 67 on the way to the hospital. And there's a memorial there for him. So what happened to the whole Spratling empire? So Spratling's good friend, his name was Alberto Ulrich, he bought the estate from the Mexican government for $10,000 in 1967, which in today's dollars is $93,000. So why did he go to the Mexican government? He didn't have a will. He didn't have any heirs. That's why he just took over. So what did that include? What did that $10,000 include? It included this gigantic house downtown in Taxco. It included his sprawling ranch outside of town. And it included all the original molds and the rights to the Spratling name.
Wow.
So what happened to it now? Well, he had a couple daughters. Violette is one of his daughters, and she is also an artist. Her father, Alberto, he was born in Italy, and her mother, can't remember her first name, she was born in America. Alberto said, I want my children to be born in Mexico. So she was born in Mexico with her siblings, and when they became of age for school, he sent them off to Italy, and they studied in Italy school. And she was doing art. She was a restorer of paintings and sculptures in Italy, and trained as a chef. So she is the current owner of the big house. Her sister is the owner of the ranch. So the one on the left is Violette, and this is her sister on the left. So what's going on with the house now? She made a beautiful restaurant out of the house. You can sit inside, you can sit in the garden, and she's an amazing chef. You can also stay at Spratling's Casa Spratling. It's an Airbnb now. So clearly the legacy of this one man has influenced the culture so much. He basically revived a city that was just dead. It's incredible what his vision accomplished. And even today, you see his designs all over the world, not just in Mexico, but it's just globally. I mean, many books have been written on William Spratling. So every year, the city of Taxco has a fair, a silver fair. And there's a jewelry design contest. And they also have just this large celebration of everything that he did for the city and how he revitalized the economy and just changed the town's culture. It's just amazing. Even the invitation, the flyers, they're based off of his pieces that he did. So, like many remarkable people, he had his financial issues and all of his crisis and everything, but he ultimately left the world much better than he found it. So there's a lot of people to thank. You can look up much more about Spratling on the internet. I wanted to thank my mom for helping me. This is the official taxi of Spratling. There are hundreds of Taxco. There are hundreds of VW bugs, old VW bugs, because evidently they climb hills really well. So now I'll plug a little bit of, if you got so inspired that you have to go to Mexico and you don't know where to go to see the real Mexico, not Cancun. So I run a tour every year to San Miguel de Allende. And the jewelers that have workshops and currently are working in Taxco exhibit in San Miguel and also have studios and shops that I take people all around. And it's a one-week tour to where we fly into Guerrero, which is about an hour from San Miguel. And we tour the city. And we go to a mosaic park, which is what I expected to see when I went to Spain to see Gaudi. This is like unbelievable. And we spend a day with Megan. She teaches urban sketching, so it's really fun to do that. We go to a pyramid. We see some flamenco shows, which is different than the flamenco in Spain. A little different. I also give my workshop at the Instituto de Allende, which is the art school that is in San Miguel. We go to Guerrero, which is the birthplace of Diego Rivera. We do a wine tasting. We spend the afternoon with some jewelers having lunch. and we do a jewelry project at the Institute de Yonde. That's one of Alan Revere's. I'm working with Alan. I don't know if you heard of Alan Revere, but I'm working with Alan. Alan went to the Institute de Yonde in the 1950s, so he has a personal attachment to the school. So yeah, we do a project at the school. And then the last day, we have two choices, which are very tough choices. You can go shopping or you can go to the hot springs. So, yeah, it's a lot of fun. That's it. Any questions?
They use amethyst a great deal. Are there amethyst deposits in the area?
Yeah, but mostly comes from Brazil.
Mostly what?
Brazil. Yeah. Most of those type stones. The stones that are local to the area is obsidian, turquoise, jade, those type of stones. Yeah, you can, like, when you're walking around the archaeological sites, you can find obsidian just laying on the ground. You're not supposed to take it. You're also, those pictures that were just slightly hazy, those were pictures I took in the Spratling Museum in Taxco where you're not supposed to take pictures. But the third time, the guy just kicked me out. But I had already got on the phone, so.
Was the silver they used always sterling, or did they use other alloys?
So they would alloy it lower a lot of times.
Yeah.
Sometimes you would see like 800 on a piece as opposed to 925. So they just alloyed it lower. You'll see that in Europe also too, on a lot of pieces, but mostly it's sterling. Now, there are some that are marked silver, and they're not silver, like it's called Mexican silver, but it's not silver. It's usually like a nickel silver. Any more questions? Okay.
Thank you. All right.